The touch of your hand makes me tremble within. Love the smell of your hair, lying here in my bed. Never gonna be alone, 'cause with you I'm finally coming home. I wanna be with you always, 'cause that is what my heart says. That's what my heart says. I wanna be with you always. You are my world in every place. It's the things that you do, and it's the smile on your face.
We have some stars in the building.
I know I'm in a better place. I'm in a better place. Without your love, I am out of place.
We'd like to welcome you to BeMoreNews.com, the news before the news, where we uncover the truth. Special thank you to our executive producer of Be More News in Niagara, Mr. Emmanuel Price. We're up here on, this is the New York side, and that's the Canadian side, and we will be there for the New Year's dropping of the ball or somewhere around here. Very beautiful Niagara Falls, some of the best water in the world. So make sure you get out, get your passport, and do some traveling. And keep watching BeMoreNews.com, the news before the news, where we uncover the truth.
Every place. Oh,
Welcome to BeMoreNews.com, the news before the news, where we uncover the truth. Here on the Branch, Mississippi, with our very dear friend Corey Mathis. Beautiful towns and waters. Watching BeMoreNews.com, we're going to give you an update. 10 years since Katrina. The news before the news, where we uncover the truth.
things that you do, and it's a smile on your face.
Top of the day to you. Good morning, good morning, good morning. How are you, everyone? Saida?
Yes, good morning. How are you?
Good, good. Delegate Ruff?
Good morning, Brother Doni. Great to
Good
see
deal.
you. It's a blessing to always be here with you, man. Appreciate everything you do, providing media that uplifts our people. Just glad to be on with you once again.
Malcolm Ruff coming with the uppercuts early in the morning. Scott Phillips?
Early in the morning. It's good to be on with a young man. And Saida, Doni, thank you for having me on your show. As
Absolutely.
always, I appreciate you, my brother, for all that you do.
Now, Saida, both of these gentlemen are not only just delegates, they're both
That's right.
attorneys.
Okay, so we've got some law in the. Okay, so all right, I already have my questions.
Hold on.
So,
Okay.
Delegate Phillips, I've known you the longest. We go back to the mid-'90s, and we got to put a plug in for Black professional men.
Mhm.
And then Malcolm, I've done work for Mr. Murphy going back to when we first started Be More News some 23 years ago. So Saida, me and these gentlemen have some history together.
Long-standing history.
We got to start with this cat, Scott Phillips. He's got stories.
Scott,
Oh,
tell me
man.
everything you know about Doni right now.
Oh my goodness, man.
Stay
Oh
on
my
here.
So Doni, let me just say this. Doni has always been consistent. He has been the same, always about uplifting people. And our first encounter had to do with his education and this little scholarship that we were able to pull together through a company called Household Finance.
Nice.
Yeah, way back in the day. So I've watched Doni develop his brand, but also to just serve the community for over 30 years. And it's really, really been good to see. So Doni, just keep doing what you're doing, man. You just continue to, as Omar Muhammad says, you just continue to improve and progress.
So Said, you have to at least make him answer. about his organization. It's called Black Professional Men.
You
You got
know,
about
I
it.
wanted to start with that, but I definitely wanted to get the scoop a little bit of what
Sure.
I didn't know about the people in the room. No, but that's good stuff. I love that you guys together, and
Yeah.
especially in finance, especially for us to come together as Black folk in finance. That's very important. That's something that, we really need to work harder at. So as a Black man in business, tell me, how has that impacted your mission now and what you're working on in legislation?
So yeah, let me go back a little bit so I can try to connect some dots. When
Mm-hmm.
Donnie and I met, we had started this organization called Black Professional Men, and it started really kind of organically. It was this group of guys that would meet in downtown Baltimore. Once again, this is over 30 years ago. Would just see each other on the street, and we would give each other the black man nod. And at some point, we began just having conversations, and those conversations ended up with us doing lunch. And that lunch turned in from 5 people to 10 people to 20 people. And at the height, we had about 30 people. And I'm going to try to make this quick. That turned into an opportunity to support Kurt Schmoke, who was running for mayor at the time. So we sat back. We said, okay, what are we going to do for this brother that's running for mayor? We were going to throw him a fundraiser. The fundraiser occurred at a restaurant called Benny's up on 28th Street. It was a Black-owned restaurant back then. And in that restaurant, he came, and all these young brothers, we think we're going to change the world. Most of us were in professional positions in downtown Baltimore. And it just so happened, it was a weird thing. Something happened with the mayor that evening. He actually sat down to speak with us. His executive protection came up, and the next thing you know, he was leaving the room. We learned later what that incident was, and it was a personal matter involving his wife. So what he said was, I want you all to come and sit with me in City Hall, in the mayor's conference room. And it was the first time many of us had been in the mayor's conference room. I was much younger then, right? And what ended up that day, we kept saying to the mayor, what was he going to do for these young, aspiring professional brothers? And he turned the question around to us and he says, well, what are you going to do for the city of Baltimore?
Absolutely. Yep.
And that was the thing that started Black Professional Men. A few of us walked out of that room and said, you know what? He gave us a challenge. Myself, Edwin Avent, and a young brother came along by the name of Drew Hawkins. And that's how this concept of bringing brothers together to really do something to change the trajectory of Baltimore City, particularly young men in Baltimore City, occurred. And from that, a number of things have spurred. When I look around the city and I see our former CEO of the airport was one of the young men that came out of BPM. When I look at Baltimore Collegiate School for Boys, the CEO that runs Baltimore Collegiate School for Boys is Edwin Avent, who was the founder of BPM. When I look at the State House and I think about the chief of staff for the governor of the state of Maryland, Fagan Harris, he came out of BPM. When I think about individuals like Doni, who are just leading the way in terms of getting the word out about the African-American community, Black Wall Street, he came out of BPM. So when you look around the city, 30 years later, I'm really appreciative of the fact that
that's amazing.
Right. It's got tentacles everywhere.
Yep. Yeah, no, I mean, what a story. First of all, the fact that you stood up to the challenge and you felt that you could. What do you think? What do you think that was for you? Because you said you were a young man back then. Did you have the courage and the strength you did now? Were you nervous, or did you say, we have to do it for the culture? Like, what was that?
I love that. Have to do it for the culture. We were thinking we had to do it for our people, but I love the concept of doing it for the culture. And yes, we needed to do it for the culture. Sometimes you get pulled into things, but then it becomes your vocation becomes your avocation, or your avocation becomes your vocation.
Yes.
And 20 years later, that's really how I feel. Right.
Okay.
My
So
avocation, the thing that I loved, has now become my vocation.
I love it. I love that.
I got to tell you this, that 95, that was at a time when the crack epidemic was at its height. And yeah, young men being killed on the streets of Baltimore like it was going out of style. So just like Drug dealers were recruiting young team members to be future drug dealers. Scott was out there slinging black professional men.
I love it.
Right up in Mondawmin.
I think that's amazing.
So look, we know you have limited time, Delegate Phillips. I'm sorry, I should have called you Delegate. Delegate Ruff, we going up to Park Heights and going into the 41st district. So Saida, Delegate Phillips is out Liberty Road. He represents the 10th legislative district. So that's in between Security Boulevard and Ricestown Road, roughly. More so Liberty Road, the Liberty Road corridor. This guy right here, Delegate Ruff, not only does he work for one of the most famous attorneys in the world, straight out of Cherry Hill, he's got an interesting story on how he became delegate.
Well, tell us about it, Delegate Ruff. And I definitely I want to hear about all the opportunities to come from this area, because I'm very familiar with that area.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you. Well, I became a member of the General Assembly a little haphazardly. I've always decided that I wanted to be in leadership, and that was a part of my makeup, just coming up and being raised by a strong Black mother and having brothers very similar to Scott Phillips, bringing me into the fold. And, that's my big brother, not only in the legislature, but in our fraternity. So I'm going to say Blue Phi, and make sure, that we represent always. But I was asked to attempt to replace my predecessor, Tony Bridges, when he was moving out of the legislature and back into the Department of Transportation. And, that meant I had to go through the selection process of the State Central Committee. It ended up being a tied vote. And ultimately, the tie-breaking vote goes to our governor, who, of course, is the first Black governor of the state of Maryland, Wes Moore. And each year, me and my wife host a Juneteenth celebration. We used to host it at our house. And so luckily that year, for the third time, Governor Moore came to our house for Juneteenth. And instead of giving his usual stump speech about wages, wealth, and what's the third one, Scott?
Work.
He ended up acknowledging me and then appointing me to the House of Delegates right on my back porch in front of all my best friends. And
right where it started. Amazing.
Right in the middle of West Arlington. So even though I grew up in Park Heights, say that again.
I said, congratulations to you. That's big. That's huge.
That was one of the most amazing days of my life, and led me to a path over the past 2 years to be able to work on, amazing pieces of policy. And so the other part that you were asking me about, as far as the opportunities that are going to be available in the Park Heights area, although I do want to say, I am a part of the continuation of the Liberty Heights corridor, which runs right through the 41st district as well, and drops off into my brother's district out in District 10. But in Park Heights, with the renovation of the Pimlico racetrack facility, we have some significant opportunities that are going to open up, specifically because of legislation the ways that we worked on that legislation, amendments that we made to that bill, which granted $500 million to the Maryland Stadium Authority through the legislation. We made amendments. Senator Antonio Hayes specifically made an amendment to that bill that requires the thoroughbred racing industry to give the community 10% of all profits that are made.
That's what I want to hear. Yes.
And then also I made an amendment including a community benefits plan for Park Heights, for the master plan surrounding the renovation. So the Maryland Stadium Authority was not able to get one single dollar of this initiative until there was a comprehensive 8-point plan to address vacant and blighted housing, community beautification, workforce development, public safety, and the list goes on and on. Through what's called Pimlico Area Work Group. We have a thorough, comprehensive workbook of projects that are going to be lined up and funded through the Department of Housing and Community Development. So people that are looking to get into the real estate game, especially, that is where the opportunity lies. If you have real estate in the Pimlico area, you need to hold on to it, because a true renaissance is on the way. And it could be a way for us to essentially start establishing a Greenwood of our own.
It will be a way.
Yeah.
It will be a way.
I love that. That's amazing. I mean,
you got to understand this, Saida.
Say it again.
Now, gentlemen, Saida's from New York City.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a little joke for her, and you might find it funny too, Malcolm. I mean, Delegate. What is the quickest route from Africa to Israel?
Are we talking about in Baltimore City?
That's correct.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you answer that.
Park Heights.
Park Heights is the quickest route from Baltimore, from Harlem to Israel. Yeah. It sure is.
So black people, there aren't just black people in that area, Saida.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm very familiar with the area. That's actually when I first moved here. I've seen so much change since I moved to Baltimore. And when I first moved here, that's one of the first areas I was introduced to. So I've seen, as an outsider, you see things a little differently. And so I want Baltimore to win. And I love what's happened since. And I love that there's continuous, resources and access, for capital for us specifically, to use and really pour into our community. But I want to see more of it. And I want to see more of you guys in that.
Well, I'm glad you said it like that, because there's a tug of war up there.
Mm-hmm.
So the 41st district just got a new state senator, but I need to take you back about 15 years or so ago, when a black woman named Senator Lisa Gladden, she challenged the incumbent, who was a Jewish woman. Her name was Barbara Hoffman. And Lisa Gladden beat the brakes off of her. She had dump trucks going up Emerson Avenue, lined up. I think Bob Clay was still alive. It was because it was a tug of war. It's majority black, but the smaller Jewish community is cohesive.
It's true.
Enters Delegate Ruff. So Jill Carter, thanks to our very fine governor, got appointed to a board, which left the seat open. Delegate Ruff sees an opportunity. Others see an opportunity. But there's also this black Jewish tug of war. And the thing that kind of troubles me, Malcolm, is that when we start talking about African-American empowerment, other people start talking about, oh, can't we share? And so when I look at Pimlico Racetrack and the Preakness, I'm not pleased with what I see for our community, because we've heard of racetrack impact funds. We've heard of the table gambling. We've heard of all of these different pieces of legislation that's supposed to bring money, like the lottery, for education. But at the end of the day, we see black people being rubbed out of Park Heights. We're being joined by Venroy July. So, Delegate Ruff, what of that tug of war? I mean, so Saida, Delegate wants to be senator now. Maybe, I don't know. Do we push him, Delegate Phillips?
I think he's going to push himself. I have mad respect for Delegate Ruff, and he's going to make an informed decision, and I'm going to support Delegate Ruff in whatever decision that is, unless he wants to make an announcement today.
Breaking news right here on Black USA.
Yeah.
Is that why you had the backdrop?
Let me just. Is that? Hey, look, man, I'm in the courthouse. But I'm in the courthouse. My fellow barristers are always in the courthouse. I happen to be in the courthouse today. That's not normal for me. But let me just say this, Donnie. I think you raising this issue is extremely important. Yes, he is. But I think raising this issue is extremely important because Black power should cede nothing. And I think we need to position ourselves in a way where we take the seats, but we leverage the power. Because having the seats, and one of the things I want to comment on Malcolm Ruff, very quickly, he has learned to leverage the power of the seat. And that comes down to, how do I move state resources around? It comes to, how do I use the bully pulpit to get messages out? We have really three things that we can do as legislators. One is to set policy. The other is to assist with moving resources. But the third is that bully pulpit. And Malcolm has figured out very quickly how to use all three to get things done for our community. So I want to commend him for that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Fred. I'll follow up on that and say, number one, thank you for your confidence and for your mentorship as I came into the House and I have 2 now sessions under my belt and a couple pieces of legislation that you've helped me navigate the waters, the rocky waters that exist in Annapolis. As far as the struggle that you're talking about, Doni, it's unfortunate that, you know, it is in a place where it is right now. But for me, when I came into this job, right, into this service, my goal was to ensure that the areas of my district that have been overlooked and ignored are the focal points of those 3 pillars that Delegate Phillips is talking about. And unfortunately, there has been a concentration of efforts in the northern part of my district. And I'm not saying that those efforts those efforts should stop, but the efforts have to be holistic across the district. And certainly I've heard the complaints of people as I spend time in Southwest Baltimore in my district that the efforts need to now shift to the Liberty Heights corridor, to the Walbrook Junction corridor, to the Emerson Village corridor. And it takes somebody who not only recognizes that need, but also has lived that need. You know, growing up in Lower Park Heights, I spent a lot of time in all of those areas. Because
do you know where Palmer Court is?
Absolutely, I know where Palmer Court is. That's still the north part of the district.
Certified.
Yeah, it runs right into Pimlico, right up into the racetrack. But I will say this. I think I am somebody who could be the top leader of this district because I have lived my life and have lived experience in all of the areas of this district that need the attention that the north part of the district has gotten, especially with the efforts over a decade in Park Heights and beyond, which we're starting to see the fruits of that labor, and will see the fruits of that labor in a much more tangible way in the coming years. That process needs to be started in other areas of the district. And we got folks like the WBC CDC, who Delegate Phillips also works with very closely. It was birthed out of his home church that is starting the Forest Park Renaissance. And I've been able to support that heavily in my role on the Budget Committee in the House of Delegates by exactly steering resources that way. A combined $800,000 just out of this past session that we have funneled into that initiative so that we can start to see the redevelopment and the re-envisioning of what Black communities should look like. And I'm trying to get you to segue into our discussion for this coming Saturday.
Yeah, let go of the mic. Let it go. So tomorrow we're having a grand discussion commemorating the 104th year since Tulsa. Van Roy, attorney July. And then, by the way, Saeed, Attorney July has a bit of an accent there. He comes from one of my favorite places in the world. He's not from the lowland, he's from way up in the mountain. You know all about St. Anne, St. Elizabeth. They were Nani the Maroon Queen. If you don't know about Nani the Maroon Queen, you better do your homework. But he comes from a revolutionary.
You got to work on your accent, Dottie.
I was just thinking, is the accent doing it for you? No.
It was working in Jamaica. They took that money. I know that.
What part of Jamaica are you from?
St. Catherine.
Nice. Okay. My grandma was from Kingston.
Okay. All right. Good to meet you.
And they never take me to Kingston. They say that Yankee boy get you beat up. What? Okay,
Oh,
Ben Roy.
you Trelawney where it's nice and safe. Is that what that is?
I don't stay in a resort. I was in St. I was way up in the mountains where the German Jamaicans live at.
Oh.
But Attorney July. So Delegate Phillips is all the way up Liberty Road. Delegate Ruff is in the middle, and you down the bottom technically.
Mm-hmm.
How does this look when you look at the evolution of the Black community? There was a time we couldn't live, Delegate Phillips, north of North Avenue, west of Fulton Avenue. Baltimore is the home of segregation. There was a time not maybe one Black person lived out Ricerstown Road. His name was Tom Smith. Long before Willie Adams, there was a Tom Smith running the numbers. But Attorney July, let's hear from you. What's the business?
So again, I represent. I'm talking from the perspective of someone that is in Southwest Baltimore, in Hollis Market in particular. And quite frankly, some of these conversations, I jumped into the tail end, so I heard what Malcolm and Scott were speaking about. But I don't think you can have this conversation unless you talk about what's happening in Southwest Baltimore, particularly considering the fact that we have the highest rates of vacancy of any district in the city, right? And so you start talking about some of these communities that have historically Black, and they have in large part been forgotten. And so, we can talk about evolution and trying to create like a Black Wall Street and talking about that, lifting all boats, raising tide, lifting all boats. But quite frankly, our tide has been ebbing for a very long time now. And, until we start talking, and quite frankly, we have some great assets. Like we have anchor institutions, we have proximity to, rail, we have proximity to major thoroughfares like 295 and 95. And quite frankly, I think it's a missed opportunity from Baltimore because there is a ton of attention. Now, I don't mean, look, there is justifiably a lot of attention and interest in trying to redevelop Park Heights. I actually sit on the Park Heights Renaissance board, so I'm all in for that, right? There's a lot of focus on the harbor, some of these other places, but I think we have to start re-envisioning what we think about when we talk about like playing from positions of strength and identifying what those strengths are. And I think that Southwest Baltimore has it. And if you can start creating some interconnectivity between some of these districts, you can actually start creating some economic activity that I think has been missing for very long now.
Delegate Ruff, how do we connect the dots?
So I think what I would say is we have to make policy meet power, right? For instance, we have a lot of silos in Baltimore. Like it's a siloed city, and the connectivity needs to be expanded through policy that we create on the state level and the local level. So on the state level, for instance, we just passed this year the Procurement Reform Act of 2025. I thought Delegate Phillips had dropped off, so I don't want to steal his thunder because he was much more hands-on with this bill. In his, it was right in his bailiwick. But it's a bill that will modernize the state procurement process to enhance, efficiency and accountability and competition for small businesses, right? Especially in the area of state contracting. This type of policy is what empowers small businesses, especially small Black-owned and minority-owned and women-owned businesses, to be able to get to that next level. And then to create that network of continuity that we're not seeing, right? So to attract the economic to attract the dollars, right? Especially state dollars, local from the local government as well. But I think what Venroy is really talking about is we got to be all in. We really have to just demand that elected officials like ourselves, especially on the local level, are just dogged and determined to steer as much resources as necessary that will actually empower us to create these ecosystems that are self-sustaining, like what my brother Venroy is trying to do down in the Hollins Market area. And unfortunately, I know he will talk about it. he hasn't gotten that support. And in fact, there's so many naysayers, right? People talk about Baltimore being a city that is often like crabs in a barrel. We have to
That's not
completely
what you.
eviscerate that culture.
But you know, that's
Roy
that's
will
a
say.
Baltimore mindset. I think. What do we do? What can Black businesses do to show
Roy
up?
got a different mindset.
So,
Though,
so,
Zach.
so yeah, let me jump in because I'm going to have to drop off. I'm going to say a couple of things as the elder of this particular conversation, right? We've seen over the years opportunities for African Americans to really engage in the development of Baltimore City. Much of that development has occurred around the Inner Harbor. I do appreciate the mayor's concept that we have to move development throughout the entire city of Baltimore, and I'd say throughout the entire region. We have some tools to do that. Donnie, Malcolm, Delegate Ruff mentioned things like the WBC Community Development Corporation. We've got Park Heights Renaissance. We've got in Baltimore County, we now have what we're calling the Greater Randallstown Community Development Organization. And we have the West Baltimore County Redevelopment Authority. We have the West North Avenue Redevelopment Authority. As legislators, as policymakers, we've got to figure out those tools and put resources into those tools so they can help to change our communities. Now, what do business owners do and entrepreneurs do? I think they've got to tap into the infrastructure that is being created to support our communities. And they've got to be aggressive in it. And they've got to hold us accountable, and they've got to hold those entities accountable. We need a stronger Southwest Baltimore entrepreneurial development entity of some type to support Vinroy and what he's doing. I've watched Vinroy over the years, and as an individual, he's had a significant impact. But when it comes to a collective, we got to figure out how we support the Vinroys of the world in East Baltimore and Southwest Baltimore, Cherry Hill, West Baltimore, Baltimore County, Eastern Baltimore County. And so that's what I would say. So we have a job as policymakers to do that particular piece. But the entrepreneurial community, the community at whole, has a responsibility to jump in, to weigh in, and to participate and the opportunities that are being presented. I love what's happening along Park Heights. I had a conversation with oh my gosh, developing along Park Heights today. I hate it. She's gonna hate me for saying this because I'm just drawing a senior moment blank. Danny Henson's daughter,
Dana.
and the work that she. Dana, thank you. Please, she's gonna see this, and I know I'm gonna be in trouble with Dana. But let me just say this. The other thing that I like is the quality of work, right? Because if we're going to bring our communities back, it can't just be, any kind of housing. It's got to be really good housing. It can't be just any development at Pimlico. We really have to have top-notch development because that brings people in. The work that's being done at the Inner Harbor with Dave Bramble, I'm not completely convinced that it's the right plan, but what I do like is, he is really bringing in real investment to make in our Inner Harbor, which will make a difference, not just to African Americans, but to the entire community. So the concepts of Black Wall Street is really where we come together and we leverage each other's strengths and we support each other. And this 104th commemoration, Donnie, I'm looking forward to being with you tomorrow just to talk about that. How do we empower each other?
So Scott, before I know you say you have to jump, but I just have to. I want to piggyback on something that you said and that Delegate Ruff said. There's this idea of historically, it feels like Delegate Ruff talked about these silos, and I don't just think it's like community silos. I think actually one of the issues, like there's a silo of there's like the government people, and then there are the business people, and they are not communicating, right? And quite frankly, if we're talking about breaking down silos, yes, we need to talk about how can what's happening in Park Heights, how can we mirror some of that with what's going on in Southwest Baltimore? We need to obviously think about that, what's going on with Winata, how that might potentially impact what's going on over here. But honestly, one of the biggest frustrations that I've had is that there's this like lack of communication generally between the business people and the people who are actually putting forth policy. I can't tell you how many times the conversations generally are one way. Something will be coming up in legislation. Somebody will call me about it, and then I gotta call Antonio or somebody and say, "This is not good. Like you should not do this because this is gonna actually hurt the development. Like what you're thinking about doing is actually going to have the complete opposite effect." There needs to be a much more a deeper conversation about how are our legislators actually talking to the people who are on the ground doing the economic development and thinking about the policy that's actually going to impact those communities. You talk about Black Wall Street; those conversations were happening back in the day.
Absolutely.
That right now it feels like there's a dearth of those conversations, and so we end up that with all these things that are well-meaning, but then it ends up they're passed and it actually doesn't actually help. I can't tell you how many times Delegate Ampry has come to me and said, "Oh, he needs to talk to me about something that's going up." Like we should have had these conversations before when the opportunity zones were coming out. I was the one that was like, "Okay, let's think about how do we actually refine these in ways that are going to actually beneficial for our communities." Like there are people who are dealing with this on a day-to-day basis from an economic and development standpoint that the conversations just aren't being had with our elected officials. And that's kind of one of the breakdowns that consistently plays our community, because I can guarantee you this. In other communities, those conversations happen all the time.
We remove those barriers though. What do we do about that? And what barrier would
I think it should actually be very easy, because all the people, we all have access to the people that are actually on the ground doing the work. We know who they are. It's just that there's like this mentality of like people are, like Scott Phillips and I worked on something before where we were on this organization called Baltimore African American Home Builders Cooperative, which honestly, to this day, my time in Baltimore, to me feels like the greatest missed opportunity that we've ever had in Baltimore. And I'll talk about this for a second. I came in on the latter end of this organization, but it was basically this organization that had come about from some people who were very thoughtful about how do you actually get resources into our communities. And they had actually got like 5 banks to agree that if we had investment, they would match the investment and give up to 5 times what the money that we raised were to actually build property, to like renovate houses and create home ownership opportunities. And we couldn't find the people to give us the guarantee. Like that would have been a 5x type return. And we couldn't get it done. And I joined after the organization was 2 years in, and I was working on it for another year, and we just couldn't get it done. Like those are such missed opportunities that could have actually had like real impact in our communities. But we need to be having these conversations from the front end, where those people should have been lined up from the beginning to think about how do you bring about some of those opportunities that we're talking about.
Well, NADA's doing something similar for businesses right now.
So let me say this, because I got to drop. Yeah, and what NADA's doing, I got to drop. But Vimroy, I think there've been a number of missed opportunities, but I also think that there have been some opportunities which have flourished, which have come to fruition. What NADA is, I believe, a great example, and it's going to take more, right? So these conversations, being honest with each other, I think are the most important things that we can do, and trying to, Donnie's going to convene a group of people tomorrow. I will be there, making sure that we are in the rooms talking to each other. Myself and Malcolm, we are accessible. Matter of fact, I'm in the fight, right? I mean, I'm still serving as counsel to the WBC Community Development Corporation. We've taken the corner at Garrison and Liberty. We've got a second set of housing going up. So when it comes to policies, I'm thinking both sides. I'm thinking, how do I facilitate what I got to do when I get out of Annapolis, as well as how do I work with policies that make sense when I'm in Annapolis? So with that, Donnie, I'm going to see everybody tomorrow. Thank you all very much. I'm going to do some delegate related responsibilities and see my students cross the stage from Milford Mill. Take care.
Congratulations, Milford Mill.
Congratulations.
We got to put a plug in for Kevin Johnson, who did the Dorothy J up there on Liberty Heights. Delegate Ruffin, you've been a tad quiet, and Saida, you might want to ask this guy. He's got more to tell you. I mean, it's all over his face. Can't you see it?
I can see the eagerness. I want to hear everything he's got to say. I have some questions too, just again about the community that you're in and where you want to begin. I heard you say a lot of things, but where do you start with the redevelopment, with the opportunities that you're trying to present to the community?
Well, I think the next one up, to turn a phrase, is Liberty Heights, the Liberty Heights corridor that Delegate Phillips was just talking about. And it has already started with the infusion of state dollars into that corner, right there at Garrison and Liberty Heights, which is blocks from my house, but also could be a town center of sorts. We've already had a little bit of decline. The only pharmacy right there, Walgreens, just divested from the area. But what needs to happen? Say that again.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
I see it as an opportunity, and so does the organization WBC. We're looking to figure out how do we prevail upon the private owner of that building to repurpose it for the good of the community, for some type of facility such as a actual sit-down restaurant or something that uplifts the community, like a community center or an incubator space. So that's really what it's about, is being imaginative, unabashedly, unapologetically strong for our people, but also thoughtful, and finding a way to figure out how to recirculate dollars throughout our community. I think that's really got to be critically at the focal point of any development, is how do we allow our dollars to reinvigorate themselves, right? How do we turn over the dollar within the community and infuse resources into Black businesses? So I think it really starts with sitting down at the table and bringing businesses to a round table that I'm going to be proposing throughout the next year. All small businesses throughout the Liberty Heights corridor and through the Emerson Village corridor. Emerson Village is going to simultaneously happen because we have private investors from Chicago. I shout out Lanier Richardson, who is heading
Black
up.
developer.
He's a Black developer from Chicago who has taken the initiative and we've funded his project to the tune of $2 million from the state legislature prior to my entering the delegation. But I certainly support that redevelopment of the old historic Emerson Village Shopping Center, which will again change that landscape as well, where you have a bunch of small Black-owned businesses that are going to get new facades, a regeneration of the parking pad where there'll be restaurant pads installed there. That development is already happening. And so we have to think comprehensively about how that affects the community, just generally the quality of life. And I know President David Smallwood and Monique Washington down in Emerson Village.
I was just going to mention their names. I don't want them giving me a call, bro.
They're going to keep my feet to the fire to ensure that development doesn't, really negatively augment the way of life in that area. And my eyes are completely on that piece logistically, but economically, right? We have to make sure that we are staying in lockstep with folks that are willing to take that risk and to redevelop areas and to put their own stake in the game and to support that through subsidies that we're creating, not only through policy but direct line items in the state budget. And I think that's what's going to spark it, right? And all it takes really is one spark.
It takes access to state and city contracts for Black businesses. Are we going to see any change in that? More access?
Well, with the landscape legally on DEI, we have to be very thoughtful about it. So when you look at the office, like things like the renaming of the Office of Social Equity in the state, and then this Procurement Act that we talked about, House Bill 500. We don't want to invite the Trump administration to come in and try and jam up the progress we're making. So we got to be thoughtful about how we do it. But I think it has to be mirrored after this legislation that we just talked about, right? Even though it is legislation that will focus on how to uplift small businesses, we know that the majority of small businesses in the state, in the city of Baltimore, are Black-owned businesses, right? And so that's how we will funnel the dollars and the resources. We can't say in the legislation this money needs to go directly to Black people, but we can fashion it in a way that the money is going to arrive where it's supposed to, where it's most needed.
Okay, I like that. That's definitely a great plan. I think that's what the people want to hear.
Absolutely.
Venroy, you've had experience with Black developers down in your neck of the woods. Lassiter, as Delegate Ruff is talking about the Black developer uptown. How's been your experience in Southwest Baltimore with the Black developer, University of Maryland, and all of that mix? You weren't expecting that curveball early on a Friday morning. All right, so we'll just pass over Lassiter. What's the
Look, I mean, like, the reality though is that, like, right, like, I'm certainly not here to defend Lassiter or what happened with that whole boondoggle. The reality, though, I think that what has happened with that development is actually, we should be talking more importantly about, like, the impact that it actually has on the community and what actually, that neighborhood has been basically waiting for this development for 20 plus years, and now it's like basically starting over from scratch. And if you listen to both sides, this idea of like, oh, we couldn't get funding. Well, everybody knows that every developer who has this issue, the big issue is funding. And so when Malcolm is talking about how do you funnel resources into these communities, we need to start thinking about like we have to understand that, particularly during development in some of these neighborhoods, like a traditional bank underwriting is not going to work unless you're bringing other type of grants or other like state delegated money. And so we have to start thinking about think about how dramatic that development could have potentially been. And maybe it was too big, right? Maybe we should be doing smaller incremental development. Like that's not for me to discuss. That's my strategy. It's kind of like a block by block type development as opposed to taking on acres and acres of land. But the reality is that whether you're talking about a big development or a small development, it's really about like how are you pulling together your capital stack. And like I come from it strictly from like a corporate. I'm a corporate attorney, so I understand. And I'm thinking about like you can say all these great things about what you're going to do, but unless you can pull the money together, it's not happening. Like so, we need to like I appreciate the conversation about like Black Wall Street, but we have to start thinking about how do we get the money into those neighborhoods. Until you have that conversation, nothing happens, right? And look, the reality is that like we were talking earlier about the mindset. I do think there's a conversation to be had about like how do we actually like there is a change of mindset that needs to happen within our community about like what development looks like. I cannot tell you. I've lived in my neighborhood for 10 years, since 2015. And I'll tell you, I'm still called a gentrifier. I'm like, what? Definition of gentrification includes living in neighborhoods that you're developed. Like all my properties are in a 3-block radius. Like I'm walking to every property now. And yet I'm called a gentrifier, right? And I'm being called a gentrifier by Black people. I've been called a carpetbagger because I actually ran for city council because I was trying to change what's going on. I was called like we have to there's a deeper conversation that needs to be had about like what do we actually need to like do you want development or not? And the real question is, do you want development by anyone or do you only want development by people who were born and raised here in Baltimore? And that's a whole different conversation because I heard Malcolm mention that he's from here and he's right, which I appreciate. I get all of that. But you also giving money to Lanier who ain't from here, right? Yeah. Like there are people who are coming and recognizing that like this idea, like people always come to me and they're like, you're trying to build Black Wall Street. There's this other Black Wall Street on 25th Street. There's another area that they call Black Wall Street. I'm like, look, we need as many of these as possible. Like I don't need to have the only Black Wall. This is what I'm doing because I know what I see and what I think can be accomplished here. but we need to start pulling those different pieces together and having as many of those as possible and getting as many people involved in the development of our communities as possible, whether or not you are from Baltimore or not.
Agreed.
Right? That's a conversation that I'm not sure that we're prepared to have right now. And I don't want to be the guy
I am, and I'll be the first one to call you a carpetbagger if you weren't legit. But you are legit, and you walk these streets. And anybody call you a carpetbagger, tell them Donnie Glover said to my face.
Listen,
I thought they called you a carpetbagger because you went to UNC.
I am absolutely quiet, but I hear you completely. But I mean, you're absolutely right. That's first of all, that's where the dollars come in. We want tourism. We want that. That just makes the most sense. And I know that Baltimore wants that too. But I think that there is a very specific way that we may want it to happen. But it's not about how we get there. It's just the outcome. So I don't know if you have anything to say about that, Delegate Ruff, but definitely we want to see it happen. And I don't know if it matters how we get there. Does it?
I think it does. It definitely matters how we get there. But okay. I think what my brother Vinroy is saying is that there are hangups that communities have in Baltimore City that simply just don't make sense and are counterintuitive to the development of our neighborhoods, much to the detriment of people everywhere, especially our children, right? What kind of example are we setting?
Very well put.
Yep. Yeah. What kind of example are we setting for our kids if we can't get on the same page and let egos aside and let little small hangups aside, and go, come into a room, be able to disagree, but coming out with a solidified plan that might not be the plan that you envisioned, or it might not be exactly the plan that you envisioned, but it's the best idea, right? Billy often says, we sit in a room and we throw all ideas on the table, and the best ideas should prevail based on the majority, right? And once we have that idea, we move on it instead of backstabbing and undercutting, and trying to find ways.
Just like your race, you should not have any problem getting elected as a state senator in a majority Black district. Truth of the matter is, Attorney July, 2 Black people, one in particular, betrayed him for nothing. Got absolutely nothing.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Didn't even get a cigarette.
But that's parlor tricks, right?
Life is life.
and Brother July had his foray into politics, into parlor tricks too. So, you ain't telling them nothing other than how do we change hearts and minds to really get to that paradigm where we can be publicly unified despite potentially small disagreements in the background.
I want to respond because Andy Pierre made a comment that I've been following, and I think he actually does make a valid point, and I don't think it's actually inconsistent with what Malcolm said, right? Like it absolutely does matter about how development happens, and particularly in a city has such a high population of black population. I absolutely think there should be, and you should be creating opportunities for Black people in particular, to participate in any development, particularly if you're looking at from the smaller, like a community-based development. Like that's absolutely correct. But 2 things can't be true. You can get money you can bring money from outside, and if you're spending it with Black vendors and Black contractors to do the work, that money then gets to circulate within our community. And because those people are more focused on those communities, that money will circulate, right? And so to the extent that, it might not be someone that's from here that's actually trying to do the development, but they can pull money in from elsewhere, and they're here and they're doing it, and they're committed to the community, because everybody knows you're not getting any projects done here unless you're actually talking to the community and kind of hearing what they want to get done. Like it's just not worth it, quite frankly, because you're gonna have so many hangups, you're gonna fight you for so long that everybody understands that time was the kryptonite to a development deal. Like those holding costs, people run around and act like, it's particularly from my level, we're doing like small development, they act like you just have a bag of money sitting around waiting to deploy it. No, you're scratching and scrimping every little thing that you can to try to get these things done. And until they get done, you're not bringing any cash in. And so like this idea that you're like having people who you're trying to like benefit the community that you live in or wherever, and they're fighting you, it makes no sense because it actually is to the detriment of the people that actually live there as well.
Yep. And we need both perspectives. We need both. We need those who are from here, and we need those who are coming in and see the potential. I think often, and I know this is true for most things, when we have people coming from the outside, we see things that you don't see because you've been here for a long time and you've been here, you've started here. And I think that that's really important, that we have everybody at the table. I think, yes, it matters how, but who? Does it matter who? If they're like you said, if they're the right person, if they care, if they're genuine, does it matter who?
I say this because to that point, because I feel like I might go. This might get me in a little bit of trouble. This might get me in a little bit of trouble, but it's interesting, right? So, and I don't think it's unique to Baltimore. I think, I'm from the Bronx. I'm from Jamaica, but I grew up in the Bronx. And I remember being in New York and kind of seeing the development that happened in Brooklyn and Harlem and even the Bronx. Now you talk to cats from the Bronx, they're still like, oh, that's never going to happen. The Bronx is never going to develop, right? And I've been in other cities that had the same kind of dynamic. One of the things that was the most interesting about my move to Baltimore, I started a group with a bunch of other Black professionals called Baltimore Young Professionals. That was really about just trying to connect young Black professionals in the city. But the reality is that the vast majority of them were transplants. And it was interesting because when I first moved here, I came here and I was like, oh, this reminds me of New York. Like right when it was about to turn, there's all this opportunity here. This is great. And I'll never forget when I first moved here, I was at a supermarket, and this was like this was something that would happen consistently for me. People would ask me how I feel about Baltimore. I was like, I love it here. Like, I love it. Like, I think it has so much potential. And I cannot tell you how many people from Baltimore be like, why? And I think it's just like from being in communities where you have years after years after years has missed promises, you become more skeptical. You don't believe it's going to happen. But somebody that's coming in with fresh eyes is like, man, this has real potential. Like we've seen this happen before. And so like this idea of like, does it matter who? Like, I think it does. But I think to the sometimes you need fresh eyes. You need people who have not grown up in communities where they've been told that they're going to get grocery stores or other amenities for years, and those things never happen. Sometimes you need somebody that comes in and say like, all right, well, there obviously are some problems. I love this place, and I'm going to make something happen, and I'm going to figure out how I'm going to get cash to come in and do these things. And so who you think about, like sometimes it does matter, but like somebody like Bramble, like he's fantastic because of the fact that he's grown up here and he has actually been able to go and get outside capital to come and invest in these communities. Like he's the ideal, but how many of those are you going to get, right? Like you're not going to have enough that you're going to be able to kind of make the changes that you ultimately wanted. So you need to get as many hands on deck as possible is my personal view.
What do you think about that collaboration, Delegate Ruff?
You're muted.
You're muted.
I'm gonna steal a little time. Venroy is right. It shouldn't matter where a person is from.
Sorry.
And me, a lifelong Baltimorean, I have learned I have to welcome the Latinos who fixing the house across the street because nobody's fixed it in 20 years. I gotta welcome Venroy, and not only welcome him, embrace him as my own. But we get caught up in, and I'm gonna put it out here, in Baltimore, we get caught up, maybe it happens in New York, we get caught up on complexion.
Well,
we still getting caught up on, oh, you too light skinned, oh, you too dark skinned. And it's the little,
are we past the Mason-Dixon line?
No, we are, I'm telling you, we are still caught up in isms and divisions and Willie Lynch dumb stuff.
It's not
and
just
why when I see Venroy, I'm really proud. I want him to know we're proud. When I see Brother Malcolm, when I see you, I want us to all know we all we got. Nobody's coming to save us. The only difference they say between Jamaica and Haiti and Puerto Rico is a bus stop, is a boat stop.
Yeah.
We're from the same diaspora. We all we got. Them Jews working together, The white people working together, and we better work together. Stop letting dumb stuff divide us. Thank you.
Absolutely. And like the brothers of We Are Us say, when you say we all we got, it's also true that we are all that we need. We got to get out of our own way, is what my brother Venroy is saying, what you're saying, Donnie, what you're saying, Saida. We got to get out of our own way. And I'm saying it too. We have to be able to be, have the vision and the long-term vision enough to say, okay, my own little hangups, my own little desires, or me thinking that I know the best thing. Me as a lawyer, my best tool is to rely on experts. And I think that is a problem in our community, is that we have too many experts and not enough soldiers, right? Some people's jobs are to be the vessel. Some people's jobs are to be the supporters. Some people's jobs are to be the high-level strategics.
Everybody can't have the spotlight. That's right.
And we got to figure out how to let people know what their roles are, for people to acknowledge what their roles are, and that everybody play their part.
Yes. And take pride in it too, because you're still, like you said, everybody's just as important. So yeah, I love that. I'm gonna steal that, by the way.
Yeah. And I'm sorry. I keep jumping at stuff that I'm seeing in the chat, because there's a point that's kind of like floating around about like this, like they in New York when they put a Starbucks in and blah blah blah. So I think one of the things that is the most appealing to me about Baltimore is that we don't have to do gentrification in the ways that we've seen it happen in other cities before. And that's one of the things that I'm like hyper focused on in my district, is that, look, there are general themes in development, right? That you see, you go to different cities, there are general themes. There are certain types of businesses, certain types. And when I travel for work, I always go to these communities that have been gentrified or transformed. And you kind of see the same general themes, right? Like, we don't have to be afraid of a Starbucks coming in. We can just create a coffee shop and put it in our development, right? Like, people want to be able to gather. That's what Starbucks, they want to be able to go in, get their caffeine, and or gather, right? So we have these underlying themes that we need to be thinking about. Like, how do we get our communities? Like, we are so afraid of gentrification and blah blah blah. Like, let's rethink what that actually looks like. Like, we can do it from a very localized level, thinking about like, how are you going to do the things that are going to get your communities to get, because the reality is, like, when I do my development, and I don't care who wants to be mad, I'm not only trying to build stuff for Black people to come in and be customers. I want everybody from University of Maryland to walk down to the block and give those Black business owners their money too. Absolutely. I want people from Union Square to come and buy whatever the people who are in my development is selling, right? Yes. So this idea, like, we can focus on like, oh yeah, we need to empower Black, but at the end of the day, we need to be creating opportunities for every single person and I know Malcolm was talking about, you have to be kind of very thoughtful about the words that you use. Like, I am very clear. I don't have to be thoughtful, because I don't want only Black dollars in my community. I want people from everywhere to come and spend their money with the Black vendors, the Black business owners that are in these communities, that are providing the best product and are providing something that's missing in those communities. And that gives them more money, which they can then spend with whoever they want to spend money with, but more than likely they're going to spend it with the other Black vendors that are on the block. And so I just think we need to like think about we are afraid of gentrification, but let's think about like, how do we find that's all the things I ever work on. Like, even I keep bringing up the opportunity zones, because that was a law that was very clearly designed for rich people who have historically had money, i.e. white, and other people who have had privilege. But I tried to get a legislation that was actually going to allow just regular people from our communities to actually take a benefit from, but that just completely got blown up. Nobody even they didn't push it. It never got any traction because we didn't have representatives that understood what was going on. So when Malcolm talks about like the experts and like the people who are actually experts who are doing this stuff on a day-to-day basis, like we really need to lean into those people so that they can help to guide what we are doing and thinking about ways that we are, particularly those that are focused on trying to create Black wealth and Black opportunities. Like we don't have to say everything is Black. We can do it under the just put it in a framework that's actually going to allow for us to participate, which is what the issue is. We haven't been participating in what's been going on.
Yeah.
Listen, we've gone over, and I'm amazed, Saida, that we were able to get so much done in an hour and 5 minutes with 3 lawyers. But Malcolm, Delegate
I'll tell you what, something you don't know. I've known Malcolm since he was in college. When I was in law school, Malcolm was at when Malcolm was in undergrad at Duke when I was at law school at Duke. So I've known Malcolm and seen this brother come up over the years, and now he's like a big boss and stuff. Now it sounds like he's about to be a state senator. Like I see the evolution of this brother. It's like amazing.
And the same goes for me, man. The same goes here because when I saw you in Baltimore, I was like, how did this brother end up in Baltimore? But it's one of the most amazing and positive things, advantages that Baltimore has gained is the fact that you ended up here, my brother. And I just appreciate
so Delegate Ruff, why don't you take us out on a high note? We'll be down at the Thurgood Marshall Amenities Center tomorrow. But I gotta ask, did the Caribbean restaurants do well this year at the Preakness?
Well, I think so. I mean, a number of them were featured, I think, inside the racetrack. But we got many opportunities that need to be elevated and in the reimagining of what Preakness looks like so that it is completely geared towards uplifting the areas around the racetrack. For instance, when the bill was introduced into the legislature, how much money was in it for the community surrounding the track? How much? Take a guess.
None.
0. And so it takes poignant legislation like what I was talking about earlier that Senator Hayes did, that I did, and it's not going to happen overnight. Those are the types of things that build, our Rome over the a couple of years that this is going to happen. When we get the dollars poured into Park Heights through DHCD, then you'll be able to see, right, that economic connectivity that we're talking about. It's not going to happen overnight just because we've passed the bill and declared it so, right? We have to set up the infrastructure, right? And I know that's going to happen because I'm going to be the watchdog standing, at the start of every legislative session, ensuring that the progress is made. And I think one of the things we got to talk about as we look forward to our conversation tomorrow is going back to the mindset that we're all talking about that has held us back in development in Black communities is how did we get here, right? We're talking about commemorating Tulsa, a situation where, Black folks were massacred, right? And the complete infrastructure that had been established that could have been one of the strongest building blocks for what Vinroy is doing and for what's happening in Park Heights and what's happening in the Liberty and Garrison corridor could have really been a stepping stone that was completely obliterated over a rumor about a white woman being violated, which was completely untrue, right? We got to talk about what it means to really allow us to get rid of the racial wealth gap, right?
Yeah.
And that means we got to talk about reparations, right?
Damn right. Thank you. Right? And let me just get this in. Be careful.
That was a teaser for tomorrow, Donnie.
Be careful with what Michael Randolph wrote here about reading mainstream media. He says Trump wants to make Baltimore white again. Time out, Michael Randolph. If you know your history, you know that Baltimore had the largest population of freed Black people prior to the Civil War than anywhere in the country. So we got to be careful of what we take off of Fox and digest. Saida, I'm going to leave it to you to close it out, but thank you. Great job. And tell them about your business, Saida.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry. Andy Pierre is gonna have my hide if I don't at least plug Juneteenth. So we talk about Tulsa, but we also got to talk about June. There he is. Look at him. Right.
Yeah, he was already into it. He was been talking about it this whole time.
Right on cue.
I didn't know what he was talking about. Not like
I didn't gotta say anything. But June 14th, we can start the movement, right? Juneteenth, my Juneteenth celebration has become a movement. It's something that was incubated in the Rough House with me and my wife and my family and the closest friends. June 14th, 1 to 8 p.m., we will celebrate Black freedom. And we will also have all kinds of resources that will talk about and spread information on how we continue this journey and try to uplift the legacy of Black Wall Street all over the 41st district. So, you raising your hand because you want some VIP tickets, Venroy?
I thought that was a given. I thought that was what I got for being on the show.
But come on out. It's at Pennhurst Park. Pennhurst Park, Garrison and Pennhurst, 1 p.m. Saturday, June 14th, not on Juneteenth, the weekend before Juneteenth. Start your Juneteenth weekend off. Start your Juneteenth week off with a bang, powerfully, with me and many elected officials and live music, food, vendors, resources, Kitty Village. You're going to love it. And it's going to be an awesome way for us to jump off.
Amazing.
Can I get 2 minutes to do a plug as well? Sorry.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Malcolm has his event on June 14th. On June 28th, which is the weekend after Juneteenth, we are actually starting to open up our Black Wall Street. So we actually are opening up a Black art gallery that will be focused on showcasing work from a variety of Black artists that we're going to be opening up, and we're going to have a store that is going to focus on Black owned and locally owned vendors. So June 28th, 1000 block of West Baltimore Street, 1025 and 1027 West Baltimore Street. So come out, enjoy. It's going to be a vibe.
Amazing.
If you're in business, because I saw the brother put the comment up, if you're in business, you want everybody's money.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
You want if you're in business, if you only want Black money, I don't know. I want everybody money. The dope man want everybody money. The politician want everybody money. They ain't discriminating.
Definitely want everybody money. Tell him, Malcolm.
No, that is not true. That is not true. I ain't taking everybody's money.
I appreciate that.
All money isn't good money, but we also
because look, somebody can look that up on a report right away and be like, "Oh, for real? You're lying with that?" Nah,
that's a seasoned politician right there.
We don't want to put that on.
That's a seasoned politician. Yeah.
No, he's not seasoned. He's brand. He's a newbie.
He's got 2 sessions under his belt. Don't diminish my brother.
Not at all. Saeed, a great job. Gentlemen, we'll see you tomorrow.
Oh, no, Saeed, you need to telling us what you did.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, yes. I am a licensed therapist. I'm a clinical therapist, and I own a mental health and wellness center. And we are in Owens Mills, Maryland, but we're also virtual, so we service everywhere. So I heard you mention vendors, Delegate Ruff. I'm gonna circle back to that.
All you gotta do is you need vendors. All you have to do is go to my website, www.malcolmruff.com.
Gotcha.
At the very top of my page, all the Juneteenth information is right there, and there's a link for a vendor application. So we would love to have you. Please do that right away. And everybody that and if you want to hang with us in the VIP section,
I certainly will.
Us meaning me and Malcolm.
To my campaign committee, we'll open that door right away.
I'm on it for sure. Okay, well, find me at the Juneteenth Celebration Lifestyle Wellness Center, or you can visit us at www.lifestylewcenter.com. And you guys, thank you so much for your honesty and transparency. This was a great conversation, and I think you got into a little bit of trouble, but good trouble. Good trouble.
That's what all about. Like my frat brother, good John Lewis.
Yeah,
my frat brother.
Yeah, you can have it. Yeah, you can have that.
You got plenty of strong alphas, Also, please follow me at brother with an A, BROTHA _ Malcolm, MALCOLM, the only right way to spell it, ESQ on Instagram, brother _ Malcolm ESQ. Please follow me and see what we're up to.
Have a good day, all. Good morning, world.
All right.
See y'all.
Yep.